Monday, October 26, 1891. The New York Times. Truly a comedy of errors. Queer complications follow a Long Island City suicide. Writers of farce comedy might puzzle their brains until their hair turned gray, and then not think of anything half so funny as a little story of mistaken identity that comes from Long Island City and elsewhere. In Long Island City lives one George Brown. Brown has a wife and two children living at 132 3rd Street. Brown has a brother-in-law named John Tasker, who lives at 359 West 25th Street, this city. Brown, Brown's wife, Brown's two children, and Tasker are all good friends and live in happiness and harmony, and there is frequent visiting between the two houses. Late Sunday night, when everybody who had a bed should have been in bed, a man who perhaps did not have a bed walked deliberately off the open draw of the Greenpoint Bridge. A policeman heard the splash caused by the fall of his body into the waters of Newtown Creek. He yelled for assistance and got it. The body of the unfortunate was pulled out of the water and laid out upon the dock. Who was he? A casual passer-by knew. This casual passer-by was a well-dressed, respectable-looking individual. Looking down upon the inanimate form for a moment, he sighed and sadly said that the body was that of George Brown, who lived with his wife and two children at 132 3rd Street. A considerable crowd had gathered. Poor George, sighed the bystanders, and the policeman, who knew his business, sent for the coroner, sent a messenger to break the sad news to Mrs. Brown, and sent for a hospital surgeon and an ambulance. An ambulance and a surgeon from St. Catherine's Hospital soon arrived. Every effort was made to resuscitate George Brown, but George Brown would not be resuscitated. So the ambulance took the body of Brown, the suicide, home to Brown's wife and two children, to whom the sad news had already been broken. The wife was crazed with grief, and the two children were inconsolable. The heart of the ambulance surgeon was touched. So was the heart of the policeman. Each therefore gave heed to the pleading of Mrs. Brown to send a telegram to brother-in-law Tasker to come over and help her in the hour of her affliction. Each sent a telegram. One or the other of them got things mixed. John Tasker first got a telegram at his New York home, telling him that his brother-in-law, George Brown, had been drowned in Newtown Creek. Tasker could not believe that, for at the time brother-in-law Brown was eating dinner with him. Hardly had the two men got over their amazement at the news conveyed in the first telegram, when Brown got a telegram saying that brother-in-law Tasker had been drowned in Newtown Creek. Brown could not believe that, for he was eating dinner with brother-in-law Tasker. In fact, brother-in-law Brown and Tasker were very much mixed-up men. They decided at once to take an express ferry boat over to Long Island City and find out what all the trouble was about. They went to Brown's 3rd Street house. There they found Mrs. Brown and the two little Browns and a considerable congregation of the neighbors weeping over the body of the man who had been drowned in Newtown Creek. Mrs. Brown fainted. Brown declared that he was Brown, and Tasker declared that he was Tasker. Mrs. Brown and the neighbors, after recovering from their fright, accepted both declarations. Who then was the man drowned in Newtown Creek? Brown's wife and son and many of Brown's friends had declared that he was Brown, 50 years of age and chief engineer for the Havemeyer Sugar Refinery Company in Greenpoint. Brown in person, however, declared that he was not the corpse, so that settled it. The Central Labor Union held a meeting yesterday afternoon. A letter was received from the Long Island City Police stating that Delegate George Tasker had been drowned in Newtown Creek. His body, said the letter, was in the house of George Brown in 3rd Street, Long Island City. A motion was made to adjourn out of respect to the memory of the deceased, and it was just about to be adopted when a delegate got up and declared that he had just had a glass of beer with the gentleman whose memory was about to be respected. This was not well received, and the delegate was accused of having drank more than one glass of beer. This he strenuously denied. It looked, however, as though his reputation for truth and veracity was about to be blasted, when in walked Tasker himself. That settled that. Now it is believed that the man who was drowned in Newtown Creek was William Ludwig, a musician of this city. He weighed about 200 pounds and was about 50 years old. A membership card of the Musical Protective Union bearing that name was found in his pocket. Another card showed that he was a member of the New York ContraBass Club. There has as yet, however, been no official identification.